Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Min Kyung-ho, and I specialize in writing autobiographies lecture from 2000 to now. Let's think about it together under the title, Be sure to do this after you retire. If you're new to this video, you might think, is it possible for me to write my autobiography? There are still autobiographical courses in many parts of the country, and many people are writing their own autobiographies through them. What are the many students who are studying to write their own autobiographies? Many people usually think they've made the great achievements, but they are not. They are not famous or VIPs. They are just like you. They want to record their life history. So they take a course to write their autobiography. I'd like to start with why you should write your autobiography. You know Socrates, right? He said, life without consideration is not worth living. By the way, what is more famous about what Socrates said? Know yourself. Don't these two have a similar nuance? If there is a life being reviewed, there is a life that's not being reviewed. What does the term reviewing life mean? What does that mean? It means you're going to examine the entire life you were. You can check your life, find the meaning, compare what you've done well and what you've done wrong. That way, you will be able to spend the rest of the day more clearly. Burna Boy is an Irish playwright. He won the Nobel Prize. He has a famous anecdote. The inscription on his tombstone is as follows. It's the phrase, I knew if I stayed around long enough, something like this would happen. Why did he leave such a word meaning futility? Everyone is the same. I'm sure you do. Most people, even if they lived hard in their youth, would regret it when they die. That's something we can all relate to. The French philosopher Arthur said this, life is a sea between B and D. People make many choices from birth to death. But there are big choices and there are small choices. So, for example, if it's a small choice, it's like this. When you go from home to work, are you going to walk, bike, car, bus, train? On the other hand, what is a big choice? Think about your entire life. Maybe it's a marriage. Let's say we decided whether to marry A or B. So if I chose A and I've lived so far, and if I had chosen B, how would I have lived? So at the branch point of our lives, we make this choice. Marcus Aurelius Antonius was the 16th emperor of Rome. He wrote the Meditations. The book contains this phrase, there is very little to be unhappy about because you don't know what's going on in the souls of others. But anyone who does not watch his soul move carefully is bound to fall into misery. What does that mean? Movement of your own soul means your inner world. Am I doing well now? Is this the right road? Maybe it's wrong. Wouldn't this fall into the abyss of life? We're going to check this out. It's very important to live by tracking every moment. It's good to be interested in others, but it's more important to be interested in me than that. Goethe famously said, "Don't discuss life with anyone who hasn't eaten a tearful bread." What do you mean by wet-soaked bread? It means that tears flow from your eyes while you are eating. That means you can't have a deep conversation with someone who has never experienced the bitterness of life. Now, let's see why you need to write your autobiography. Do you think ordinary people need to write their autobiographies? They are not a famous person. Do you think they need it? Yes, they need it. Why should you write your autobiography? First, autobiography writing means to be left with meaningful value. What does this mean? It's very meaningful if you look back at your life and you look at it one by one and you put it together into a story. You may think of it yourself as a failed life, but you will eventually realize that you are not. You can find this in your autobiography. Secondly, autobiography writing means leaving a living lesson record. This is the case if you give your autobiography to your children. If you make your autobiography into a book, will you just keep it? Absolutely no. You will give it to someone. You will give it to your friends and to your children. But if you give it to your child, will he read it hard? If he is a teenager in a rebellious period, he won't read it hard. If you leave your autobiography behind, it becomes an incredibly valuable record for your child. Thirdly, autobiography writing means discovering your identity. As you write your autobiography, you'll keep thinking about yourself. You never considered yourself seriously. But when you write your autobiography, you will keep thinking about yourself. You have no choice but to think. That's how you can write your autobiography. And in that process, you get a chance to discover true yourself. Fourthly, you can write your autobiography so you won't be swayed by the world. Please understand that writing your philosophy of life is an autobiography. This time, let me give you a specific example of Russell Baker, who wrote his autobiography, Growing Up. He was born in 1925 and he is a journalist. He won the Pulitzer Prize for writing this book. He's not such a great or famous person. He's just one of the journalists and he wrote his own story. He's a normal person. The reason why I introduced his autobiography, Growing Up. The book contains an answer to the question, why do I have to write my autobiography that I just presented? So, I'd like to introduce you to this. There's a meal scene with a son who's in adolescence. Let's read the text. One day during dinner, my son put out a report card in front of me. I looked at it and couldn't get over it. When I was about to start my sermon, leaning against my back in a chair and straightening my neck, he looked at me and said with a resigned look, "Dad, tell me what it was like when you were a kid." I was angry that he said so. I thought one day my children would understand that. When the time comes when I can't tell a story, I thought that the children would want to know about my mother's childhood and the world of my childhood, and about the strange times that my mother and I, the two antiquities. When he grows up, it comes time to wonder how his mother and father lived. How was it for you? You know, when you are past 30 and you're about 40 or 50 years old, you are probably thinking, wow, this is what you're thinking. The day comes when you realize that the world is not so formidable. And by that time, you will think, how did my father and my mother live before? It was quiet when he didn't experience it, but when he experienced it, he knew it right. Probably he will think, my father and mother must have gone through that process, and how hard it must have been for them. He would like to ask his father and mother about it. But if they are already dead, who can he ask? Wouldn't it be a lesson if the father or mother wrote an autobiography and left it to their children before this situation? If you write your autobiography and give it to your children, it becomes a living lesson. Therefore, you should write your autobiography. If this video was useful, please press the subscriptions and like button. I'll see you again next time. Thank you very much.